Hello, my name is Chaplain Paul. I've been serving in long-term care ministry on and off for 15 years in Arizona. Been a healthcare activist for almost 30 years, and I'm making this video for President Trump and for the new Director of Health and Human Services for the United States, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So if you see this, Mr. President and Director Kennedy, and you watch this video, thank you. Thank you for your service, and I wish you well. Here's what the deal is. Out here in Arizona, there's a complete breakdown of protections for Arizona long-term care patients. This was uncovered in the 2002 audit of our health services. There was an audit conducted by the Audit General of the state of Arizona. In that audit, it was uncovered that our health service was downgraded, dismissed without any investigation. Hundreds and hundreds of very serious complaints of sexual and physical abuse committed against Arizona long-term care patients. We're not talking two or three, we're talking hundreds and hundreds. Sexually and physically abused, and it was downgraded, dismissed without any investigation. That's a violation of the patient's civil rights, constitutional rights, patient's rights, and human rights to be treated humanely in an American healthcare facility. And these laws and protections are not being enforced at all, or at best, very little is being enforced. Uh, uh, I will put a link to the Audit General's audit and a link to my other two videos that I made. One for you guys that I just made today, and one for Amnesty International that has it breaks everything down. It's a very good video. It breaks everything down on what's going on. This is sort of like a follow-up video. All right. So in that audit, there's a direct recommendation to do reforms. Our elected officials have not done them yet. It's 2 years later, 3 years later, and it still hasn't been implemented yet. They're supposed to create a task force created by the legislature to hold our health services accountable, make sure they're doing their job. It hasn't been implemented yet. Like I said in my other videos, there are no chaplains required in long-term care facilities. This needs to be a nationwide requirement that chaplains, spirit-filled chaplains, compassionate, good, spirit-filled chaplains be on staff either on a voluntary basis or a paid basis or supplemented by each state or even by the federal government to pay so that they don't wind up in the poorhouse like me. I'm volunteering for 15 years and I'm broke, putting everything on the line for the patients that I love, fighting this fight. That's where the name Chaplain America comes from. I'm Chaplain America, fighting to improve the safety and quality of care in Arizona long-term care. My hat here in Latin, Pro Dio et Petra. Pro Dio et Petra in Latin means for God and country. It means to serve God, but to also fight for our rights and freedoms for God and country. Okay, that's what that means. I'll put the link for the Audit General's audit. That's shocking what that uncovered. There's been no public hearings that bring in staff, family members, patients that are still alive to testify, people like myself to testify, volunteers that have seen atrocities in these facilities to testify. They don't do it. They don't want to do it. And what the end result was two or three cockamamie hearings, and I testified at one of them where the interim director just sidestepped and lied, basically flat out lied about what's going on, denied the fact that they downgrade, dismiss without any investigation hundreds and hundreds of very serious complaints. Sexual and physical abuse, patients manhandled, patients waiting all night long to be changed in their soiled diapers, which cause E. coli, MRSA, bed sores, rashes, infections, bloody blisters, and other very serious complications that landed them in ICU and straight in the grave. And you're looking at the guy that held their hand, prayed with them, cried with them, and watched them wither away and die because of neglect, abuse, and mistreatment. All right, talk to their widows. Let's get the widows together. All right, and so you can hear their horror stories. Can you imagine, uh, God forbid, having someone you love treated that horribly and there's nothing you could do about it? Out here in Arizona, they changed the statute. They have stacked the deck so that people that are middle class and poor, lower class, can't do nothing about it. You can't get an attorney. Why? The legislature or somebody in the government changed the statute, so now long-term care lawsuits are no longer being awarded attorney's fees. What that means is when you have basic neglect that causes real complications that are treated and cured, like a bed sore, rashes, infections, bloody blisters, E. coli, MRSA, and it's treated, okay, and the patient heals, you could still sue back in the day for 20, 30 grand and be awarded attorney's fees. Well, if the attorney's fees are 40 or 50 grand, and you take that out of the equation, then nobody's going to take, they're not going to take the case. The only people that are going to hire an attorney are people that are wealthy just to prove a point because there's no money in it. You take the money equation out, what's the point? It's a joke. So that statute needs to be changed back. There's no chaplains required in these facilities. And like I just said, it needs to be a nationwide requirement that we be in there for a number of reasons to help lift the patient up, settle them down, show them the love of Christ, be extra eyes and ears and hands and feet to help keep a lid on things and help the patient when they need things, like even a simple drink of water for a patient that's paralyzed from the neck down, or helping to go get the CNA to help them, request that they be changed, or God forbid they're throwing up in the bed like I've witnessed, or some other IV pops out, they fall out of bed, or some other god awful thing happens, and we're in there to go get the staff to prevent further complications. So again, the chaplains can be paid by the the facility, and they're going to squawk at that, and that's not going to work. Or they could be voluntary, and that's going to be very kind of difficult to get people to volunteer, but it could be done. Or because I do it, or uh, paid by the federal government with our tax dollars. I'd be putting our tax dollars to good use to have good spirit-filled chaplains in these facilities, so that the patients can receive the love and comfort and kindness and compassion and encouragement of Christ while going through a very difficult time. And a lot of these patients are all alone, abandoned. They have no family support. When you have a situation where a certain sector of society is not receiving same protections under the law as the rest of society, and you have a systemic breakdown from the governor on down, agencies not doing their job, elected officials looking the other way, the attorney general and the governor just giving lip service, then that's when the United States uh, uh, Justice Department comes in down to the states, conducts a full investigation to correct the problem, so that sector of society that's being uh, not receiving same protections under the law can hopefully receive same protections under the law. Like I said in one of my other videos, once upon a time there was a man named Martin Luther King, right? And he got to a point where he said enough is enough, and he started organizing, and they went to their elected officials to try to get laws crafted that were going to protect African American civil rights, or, you know, people of color civil rights. And what happened? They ignored him. So he took it to the next level with a real movement, with tactics that put pressure on our elected officials to force them to craft laws that were going to protect people from being discriminated against. Well, that's what's happening right now in American long term care. Millions of long term care patients are being brutalized, raped, beaten by violent. You have violent patients that have severe mental health problems that are in these facilities that run the risk of getting out of bed and beating and raping and murdering other patients. It happens, right? How do we know that? With this series of stories by the Arizona Republic that gives graphic stories of patients being raped and beaten to death, not one or two, raped and beaten to death by staff and by other violent patients. Staff being beaten by violent patients. All right. Story after story, graphic, in a series of reports. And what did our elected officials do? Nothing. They buried it. They don't want to talk about it. There's been no public hearings, no town hall meetings, no nothing, okay, concerning this horror show. So when you have something like that, and it's on the front page, folks, not on page 37 buried. This is on the front page. Not just one story, many stories. And like I said before, it's about a 85-year-old woman, okay, who was sick, suffering in the bed, and a monster that works in the facility came in and raped her. And so the woman got to the point where she got enough strength, crawling out of bed, crawling on the floor, and she goes to the staff door and the door's locked, so she has to literally write a note and put it under the door. There's no security, there's nothing. Nights and weekends, the place is empty. Okay, nights and weekends. Go walk the halls nights and weekends of these facilities. You look down the hall, you can't barely find not one person, and yet they're responsible for 60 patients. Patients waiting all night long to be changed. Patients waiting hours for basic service. Patients living in fear. Patients having to check all their medication to make sure their medication is proper. Patients not receiving the love and compassion and care we all need to have a fighting chance for survival. This is what's going on in these facilities. Nobody's got the guts to even talk about it except me. And then you got these other, very few. There's others. Okay, I apologize to the people out there that are fighting this battle. I'm with you 100%. But we're far and few between. And what needs to be done, man? There needs to be like a new deal, like like Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the New Deal for American healthcare, the New Deal for long-term care uh, reforms. That's what needs to happen. You need to have real teeth in the laws that are already existing. Go to ChatGPT and ask what are the laws and protections for long-term care patients. You'll be shocked. They're protected under the Ninth Amendment, the 14th Amendment. There are certain acts, like the Long-Term Care Act of 19 Guatemazul or whatever it is in the 80s, on and on and on with all these protections. Human rights protections, where patients have a right to be treated humanely, not live in fear, not wait hours to be changed, hours to be cared for. Okay, there's supposed to be staffing um, quotas, ratios, staffing ratios. Their staffing ratios are not enforced. So what happens nights and weekends? You got 2 CNAs for 60 patients. So the patients that are coma and semi-coma, paralyzed, have cognitive issues, they're not getting changed all night long, and there's no enforcement. Why? Because they're enabled to file a complaint. State doesn't come in unless you file a complaint. And then if they can file a complaint and state comes in, they don't do anything. They talk to the charge nurse or to the director, and they're told, "Oh, we're sorry, we don't have enough staff. We're sorry, we're trying." Meanwhile, people are wasting away and dying, being treated like zoo animals and prison inmates. I was an inmate at Kingman State Prison for 20 months, from 2008 to 2010. In that facility, God lifted me up as a pod pastor, head pastor of the South Yard, became a leader in the Church of Kingman. All right. When I got out, I went to a 2-year chaplaincy, extensive chaplaincy program at Phoenix First and dove into long-term care ministry. During COVID, millions of long-term care patients were locked away in isolation without any visits at all by clergy of their choice or uh, family members or friends, uh, volunteers, all locked out. Very few places have clergy on staff. This is a violation of their civil rights, patients' rights, human rights, and constitutional rights to have someone who loves them be by their side to protect and love them while sick and suffering in an American healthcare facility. Why? To make sure their medical wishes are being honored, to make sure that they're receiving the love and compassion and encouragement we all need to have a fighting chance for survival, to make sure the medication is right, to make sure that a family member can help change a patient if it's been more than a half hour and they haven't been changed, or there's other issues where the family member can help to take care of the patient. Family helps to take care of the patient. Okay. When there's not enough staff, then it falls on the family. You kick the family out, and what happens? It's a living hell on wheels. People wasted away and died all alone in isolation. Prison inmates are treated better. People on death row, inmates on death row are allowed out for fresh air and sunshine. Patients in the facilities, during COVID were not let out of their room for fresh air and sunshine. Uh, Prison inmates could receive food and other things from home. What happened to these patients? It was very difficult to facilitate that if the patient is coma, semi-coma, and other problems of paralyzed and other issues where they're not able to receive a package and open it and eat the food. They have to literally be fed the food. Okay, so it was all shut down. The United States Justice Department needs to come down here and clean house. Here's all the proof you need. In this story, in this paper, and in the Audit General's 2002 audit, there's all the proof you need. You don't need any other proof. So come on, let's get on the ball, okay? Mr. President, you're a good guy, okay? You help people. Mr. Kennedy, you spent your whole life being environmentalist and helping to improve the quality of life for millions of people around the world. Well, let's take it to the next level and improve the quality of life for millions of long-term care patients, millions and millions, because we're all next in line at some point. Okay, our mothers, our fathers, our grandparents, our sisters, our brothers, our coworkers, the guy at the store that bagged your groceries for the last 40 years runs across the parking lot at 115 degrees to get your cart and help you get in the car. And the poor man or woman winds up in one of these facilities all alone to fend for themselves, waiting all night long to be changed, being brutalized and raped and beaten down physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. Okay? That's the type of abuse, mental abuse. Patients that are unruly or speak out in defense of other patients are made to be punished, waiting hours to be changed. They withhold their medication as a means to get them to be submissive. So let's get on the ball. Anyway, have a blessed day. Hope to talk to you soon. All the information will be down below. Remember, Jesus loves you, and so do I.